Hello there, Seraph17 once again. This is my Evilwest Evil Difficulty video walkthrough. This is going to be a no-heal walkthrough to enable players who are suffering and have access to that ability to hopefully get some strategies that they can augment with their own playstyle to come out on top on this cool new game by Flying Wild Hog. This first level is a tutorial, and we will be starting with absolutely nothing on Jesse, so it's going to make some of the engagements a little bit more difficult if you've just come off a fresh save. The difficulty itself, Evil, does say that it is not recommended for a new game. I don't know if they want you to do New Game Plus instead, come in here with all your gear. They probably do, but there is indeed an achievement for doing so, and by the end of this walkthrough you will have, hopefully, the tools to help you get that. And the first thing that you'll see here is the Rentier Gauntlet, which is your combo system, and I'm going to be using a combination of punches and kicks in this early game because we don't have access to the blocking or any of the more fancy features. All of this is tutorialization, and if you do restart in these parts for whatever reason, there's no real checkpoint here. All these fights, because they are tutorial, were not designed to be retried, which I thought was quite interesting. So just be careful. And I am playing this on the PC using mouse and keyboard, and a huge thank you to the community manager who hooked me up with this game. He was part of a chain that enabled me to get this a little bit earlier than the release date, and to play it. And you're probably all wondering immediately, like, what is the game like? Is it worth trying out? Is it good? Is it bad? What is it? It's great. Buy it. That's all you need to know. I won't say anything else in these early videos because I want you to discover it for yourself, but if you are fatigued with modern gaming not letting you play and not actually having gameplay, then I think that this will be a wonderful reminder of what that should be like, because there is a lot of gameplay in this game and the pacing on it is rather sublime at times. That doesn't mean it isn't without flaws, as we move now into the hero punch mechanic, which for people that like God Hand will have a nice little visual reference for this one. So if you hold attack, you will indeed do a charged punch that knocks people up. One of the differences between hard and evil is that the enemy's aggression is slightly higher, and they do not pacify as easily in groups. So be very careful when it comes to uppercutting. It's super strong on normal and hard because the enemies kind of let you do it, but on this difficulty they're not as tenable. And you will feel that, I certainly did. And this here is a mandatory scripted heal, which you'll notice I have unbound, because I've never healed after this. I don't heal, I don't want to heal, I die instead and I retry. But you have to bind your heal to get past that screen or it will never go away. Which, I hate that design, but you know, they're trying to teach players how to play. You know, these tutorials are not for me, you know, they're for the person who's never touched a game like this. But this is the cannonball technique. Really fun technique. When you uppercut somebody, if you hold forward and hold the uppercut button, you will then punch them in midair and knock them flying. And if there's any environmental hazards around, you can knock them into those. And if there's an edge like this, you can just kill them downright. Additionally, you can knock enemies into other enemies, and when you get certain upgrades later on, you can make that even more effective. So, Cannonball, as it's known, is an incredibly good strategy of using groups of adds and groups of enemies to thin the herd, basically. And we picked up our first gold bag. Exploring in this game is not going to take you too far off the beaten path. It's all quite linear, but it's worthwhile to do it because you are going to get extra currency, and with extra currency becomes, you know, greater upgrades and more access to the tools that will make this game a lot more fun to play. But here is the cannonball into an environmental hazard. You'll notice the environmental hazard does have a glowing effect to tell you, yo dog, you can do something here. And they are really strong as well. They will kill almost everything you can hit into them, outside of some of the beefier HP pools. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for the environment. The environment is your friend, guys. The two strongest things in this game early on, environmental hazards and your mobility. But this is the first of the bigger enemies. I apologise right now, I don't know the enemy names because I'm putting these out quite quickly, but when we get later on in the walkthrough I will know them because there's a bestiary in the game too. But this introduces you to the kick, and the kick is really clever. The kick is my favourite part of the game. Whenever an enemy starts to do an attack, if you kick them you'll interrupt it. It's designed to interrupt unblockables, but you can interrupt pretty much any basic attack. And you don't have to either, because you can dodge, you can block, or you can kick, or you can even use the shotgun later on. So you have this wonderful choice of how you want to defend, and depending on what you do and how you do it, depends on the result that happens next. And it's one of the more subtle and simple aspects of Evilwest, but there's a surprising amount of choice there and player expression, which I really enjoy. But right here we're going to be using these enemies to hit this guy, and as soon as he moves, just press the kick. Keep punching him, as soon as he moves, press the kick, and he'll go down really quickly. But another thing you want to get used to in this as well, guys, is doing what I'm doing right now, using your mobility to stay ahead of the curve. There are a lot of fights in this game where you fight a ludicrous amount of adds. There are so many lackeys, so many minions, and if you're not good at staying calm in groups and herding and kiting and understanding how to corral your enemy, you're going to struggle with this game. However, I'm going to have these videos to hopefully help you out and show you some things and maybe inspire you, and then you'll be able to do it yourself and you'll realise it's really not as intimidating as it seemed. But a really good strategy to get into the habit of is what I did just then. Every enemy will try to swing you, but if you backstep away from it, they will whiff, and then you can use that as an opportunity to uppercut them and then cannonball them into some kind of hazard. It's literally what we did in Resident Evil 4, you know, nearly 20 years ago, where you bait the attack, then you slash the face, then you kick them down. And it's just as good here as it was there, and I'd really like that to be the influence to this particular mechanic, but I don't know if it is. If you're wondering what this reminds me of, a lot of people are saying Gears of War, and that is just not true. This is not Gears of War, guys. Don't even get it in your head. It's such a silly reference. Like, this to me feels a little bit like God of War 2018 God Hand, if it was, you know, super accessible and super commercial, in a sense that the game is not going to absolutely destroy you and teach you nothing, but it's still going to be really fun and interactive. And it takes all the best elements of the things I mentioned and puts them together in this nice package. And this is another moment where we're going to be using the new features to just knock these guys off. Now we've got access to the revolver. The revolver in this game is really interesting too, because it does not work how I thought it would. This gun has an aggressive auto-targeting, even if you play on manual, which I do. The gun will aim itself, guys. You need to think of it like Virgil's summoned swords. If you hold the trigger, he will fan the gun and shoot these people, and it'll just do tick damage to them, and you can focus on what they're doing. It's really meant to be used as an additive rather than as a primary weapon. And you can use it to juggle enemies, you can use it to put some damage on them, you can use it to interrupt them. It's got all kinds of focuses and features that are going to enable us to have a good time. And later on, when we take on some of the more annoying enemies, this gun becomes really good. Because there's an enemy in this game that releases leeches, and you've seen it in the trailers, you've seen it in the preview builds they've shown, and you probably thought, wow, that enemy looks annoying, because I know I did. And I can promise you guys, it is by far the most annoying enemy in the game. And we're totally going to talk about that. But for this first video, we're just going to jump in here, we're going to do some good vampire killing and kicking ass and seeing what happens, and traversing across coffins, and just moving through this beautiful game. With our pistol in hand and our gauntlet and nothing else. You might be wondering too, the game looks a little bit boring, Chris, you know, there's only a couple of weapons, doesn't it get repetitive and annoying? I will say, as simple as this, the way this game ekes out tools and toys to continue playing and new enemies in order to test them on, reminds me of what Kamiya does in his games. So if you're a fan of Hideki Kamiya, where it constantly seems like you're always fighting something new, and they're constantly giving you something new to experiment with, this game is not quite going to hit the same peaks of those, but it gets very close, and I've been smiling a lot playing this game, and you know me guys, games piss me off more than anything, because they're unambitious trash. This game impressed me, and I don't think it's going to be the best game in the world for everybody, but if you're somebody like myself, I think you're going to have a really good time. And at the end of the day, we play video games to have a really good time, and this game is a good time. And it'd be really interesting to see how it gets received. I hope it does well. I think the developers deserve to do well, but before we get to that, we've got a big fight. So it starts off with a man with the bladed weapon and a couple of the standard fodder. And all I'm going to do here is kite around using my new tools to weaken some of the smaller guys. And you can use the hazards around the room here. You can use the cannonball feature to hit the people you don't like. There's a lot going on with mechanics that you'll come to understand as you play and you'll learn. But because we don't have too much going on, I don't want to overwhelm anybody. But right now, your friend's going to throw dynamite, and you can use the dynamite to try and bait people's attacks and let them get blown up, and it'll make this go a little bit quicker. But this is something you need to learn too. You might come here and you might find this difficult, and this might take a while, but it's useful, because you're going to need to have the ability to engage like this. There's a fight later on, guys, where there's like 50 dudes in a room smaller than this. And it's nuts. It's absolutely ludicrous. But it's really fun, and it's fair, and it's doable. But you don't get to that unless you can get comfortable with this, you know? And then we have our first bigger enemy, our first elite potential. He's kind of a boss character. The bosses work in an interesting way in this game, because they have this bar system that you can't see on this one. So do you see the diamond of his HP? They've got a lot of life as well. Some of the boss enemies are absolutely absurd. You have to hit them a lot. Even when you really optimize damage, it's a bit of a weakness in the game, and we'll talk about that a lot later on. But when we get into the full meat of the game, there's a way you can stun bosses and use electricity to build on what you're doing. And right now we don't have access to it, so the best way to fight this guy is to stay in his face punching him. Whenever he does the red move, you want to kick it to shut it down. Whenever he does the clap, you want to roll backwards away from it. The dodge is very simple, guys. If you press it once, you do a really quick slide to the side, like a step. If you press it twice, you will do a roll. If you hold it, you'll just do both. And that's the end of him, and the end of the first video in the walkthrough, the first chapter, guys. So thank you for being here, thank you for watching, I hope this helps, and I will see you in the rest of our vampiric adventure. You take care now.